Hi there, Arlette. Thank you for joining. I was waiting to see if somebody would get, but you're the only one.
Um, Hi, Carlos. Sorry, I was, well, right now I'm in the street. In my car, but I um I was far away from my home, and I can arrive at time, but I tried to connect for for the class. Sorry.
Okay, it's very fine. Don't worry. I wanted to ask you, are you going to be able to practice tonight?
Um, I, I'm not sure because I'm in the street right now in my car, and I can have a piece of paper or something like that. But I will try. I can try.
Hmm.
I can, yes, I
Yeah,
can try to
certainly you can
press.
try. Yeah, you can respond like with anything you manage to perceive and to listen from the materials. I think it's totally fine. Okay, so let us go and practice them with you. All
Okay.
right? Fantastic.
Okay.
Great. And as I say, don't worry if you don't get everything and stuff, because well, as you say, it's like right now you are not at home, so it's very difficult, of course, um to memorize everything, right? When you don't have a piece of paper, you're right. Well, don't worry. Anyways, as I say, you are going to be able to respond with all you manage to listen. Okay, so let's go and practice them. I
Okay.
have um the exercises. So we're going to practice for the speaking task number 3. As we said yesterday, we have seen how this works. Um, you don't actually have the template, right? So I'm gonna show it to you before we start, so that you remember more or less the structure, right? And the template we had yesterday for responding. Let me show it to you. This one, right?
Okay.
Great. So it basically starts by saying in the reading passage, we've been immersed into the topic of, and don't worry, you can just say whatever you want in this case, right? Because you're not maybe able to copy it or something. So just can say whatever you consider to be accurate. Just start a response. It's just a praise at the end. So the thing is that you, in the first part of your response, start by summarizing the reading passage, right? In a very superficial manner, brief and concise, as we have discussed in class, right? And then you move on to the second step, likewise, in the listening passage, or you can just say likewise, right? Or moreover, whatever you want. And here you start your summary of the lecture, right? In this case, the professor is going to be discussing some examples, illustrations of the same topic that you read in the reading passage, and you simply mention it, right? Well, the professor talked about this example, she said this, and this, and then you move on to the second example and you say, well, the professor also gave this other example, and you continue, right? Is that fine? Or any
Okay.
question?
No, I have no question.
Okay, great. So let's go and practice it. Let me show you the first reading passage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this here in the chat box, and I'm also going to copy it in the WhatsApp group so that you can read it where you find it more comfortable. Okay.
Okay.
Here you have. Just a second. Okay, great. Awesome. Well, there you have it. And as you know, you have 45 seconds for reading this. So I'm going to initiate the chronometer here, and you can start reading this passage now.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, now let us listen to a lecture on the same topic. Okay, let's listen.
Now listen to part of a lecture from a class on ancient history.
Climate change hasn't always been seen as such a major factor on how we've progressed, how culture has developed, but more and more we're finding that it does play a major role. Let's take the example of Egypt. The country today is harshly divided between the Sahara Desert, where basically nothing grows, and the area around the Nile River Valley, which is still one of the most fertile places on the whole planet. But the thing is, we're now discovering that the landscape of Egypt was not always divided in that way. Instead, until the 4th millennium BCE, the desert of Egypt was actually a rich, prosperous area of fields and farmable meadows. There were societies living away from the Nile, successfully farming or getting by in a place that would later be completely uninhabitable. But then, of course, the climate changed and the Sahara Desert formed. That meant people were forced to move to the Nile Valley to survive because there were no more fields to cultivate or animals to hunt. So right, you can imagine their culture had to adapt as they moved to a new area, a new climate. But it doesn't stop there. The Nile Valley was already settled. So these newcomers fleeing the desert, they evidently fought the people already living in the valley. And we see that from the construction of these giant defensive walls for the first time in history. So right, people joined together behind these walls and formed cities to protect themselves. This was a large interaction between communities, deeply affecting the local culture. The changing landscape was at the heart of that change.
Explain how the lecturer's claims give a concrete example of climate change's effect on culture.
Great, very good. So I know that you didn't have a chance to take notes on this. So as I say, in your summary, try to highlight and mention all the main ideas that, well, that attach to your mind, right? So, well, let us go. You have 30 seconds to think for a while what is going to be your summary, okay? So please, you can start thinking about that summary now. Beautiful. So you can start responding then to the question now.
Um, to begin with, in the reading passage, we read about the climate change. Through history, the climate change is not, it's mentioned in some evidence in history. Um, the variation of weather make a big influence in the civilizations and cultures of the world because there are evidence of the climate change and the change of environment in around the world. Also, on the other hand, we heard about an example of Egypt many years BC, before Christ. The desert has had another another environment. it was very rich and full of nature. Now we see a land as a desert, but in the previous period, there was a different type of environment. So the culture, the civilization demonstrate the adapting changes, and also the constructions around the new environment. Also, this civilization make a different construction around this type of environment or land. I don't know if it's fine. Yes.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Thank you very much. Great. It was very good. All right. Fantastic. So great. So let me comment a little bit on your response. I think it was very good. Actually, I'm very much impressed. You don't have notes, but it was a great summary. It was you got basically all the more the more discussed ideas in the passage, and also, of course, the most important things. It was great. You talked about the reading passage when it discussed how climate change has affected and influenced civilization centuries ago, right? And then you talked about the listening part when you said, in the fourth millennium before Christ, there was this different landscape in Egypt when the people living in there was differently organized, because there was no such a division as the one we have today in the river valley and, of course, the Sahara Desert, which, according to the professor, and you said it, it was very much prosperous and fertile during that time. Now, the fertility, of course, declined since the time this desert began to form, and then, of course, this affected the culture because it somehow forced two different groups to fight for the river valley in order to survive, right? And I think that all those details were very good mentioned by you. Great, it was a very good response. So let's go and continue. Then we have more exercises. So let us read and listen another one. Okay, let's go. Awesome. Oh, we have seen this before, so let's just skip it. Right here we have a new one. So we're going to be reading about pictographs, a very interesting topic. Well, here you have the reading passage there and also here. Great. So please, dear Arlette, you can start reading this new topic now. Awesome. There we are. So now it's time for us to go and listen to a lecture on the same topic, that is to say, pictographs. Well, let's listen.
Now listen to a lecture in an art history class.
You might be surprised at how close the link between those ancient symbols and our current writing systems actually is. Let me show you some really neat examples from the Roman alphabet to illustrate. Take the letter A. It looks kind of like a triangle with two sticks underneath it, right? Well, those sticks used to actually be horns on a drawing of a bull. A started out as an ancient Egyptian pictograph of a bull's head. This naturally stood for the word bull or a similar creature, but over generations, the eyes and other details on the bull's head disappeared until the head just looked like a triangle and the horns just looked like sticks. Voila. The next example is a bit more distorted, but the letter E has a very similar story. This one started out as a stick figure, an image of a person praying. A line down the middle represented the legs, body, and head, and then 2 arms extended out on either side. But over time, the symbol was rotated. A rotation like that is pretty common historically, and a part of the image was lost. Now, the 3 horizontal strokes of the E, those are what's left of the 2 arms and the head of that person in prayer.
Using examples from the talk, explain how pictographs changed to become modern writing.
Great, there we are. So let us go and now start with the 30 seconds of preparation. So please, dear Arlette, you can start preparing your response now.
A question: how many time I have to develop this summary?
You have 30 seconds for preparing.
Okay.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Awesome. Well, please, now it's time for you to start with a response. So please, you can start responding to the question now.
Okay, to begin with, in the reading passage, we read about the pictographs. The pictographs are pictures that represent a word or idea. These pictographs are used in the Asian era, in different cultures and parts of the world, like Middle East, China, Mesoamerica, and other civilizations developed different, but the archaeologists find some things in common. On the other hand, we listen about the different types of letters in the actuality we use. Are in the Asian world are pictographs who represent some kind of activity or some kind of cultural representation of this civilization. Okay. I can control the time. I don't know if how much time I speak.
Yeah. No, it was okay. It was no, it's okay. Don't worry. I know that you cannot look at the clock. It was 1 minute and 30 seconds. I'd say it was good. Don't worry. Great. But it was a very good response. You know, I think that you summarized very well what the reading passage said, how these different cultures develop the same pictographs, right? Well, not the same pictographs as such, but the same mechanism for expressing ideas through this graphical representation, right? Very good. And then you talked about, as the professor said, some letters from our current alphabet and how they used to be a pictograph in the past, but how throughout time we've been, of course, changing and evolving, and thus we have gotten the letters we currently use in our system, right? So it was very good, I think. It was a great summary. Great, fantastic. So we can move on to another exercise. We have more.
Okay, thank
My pleasure. Okay, so let's continue. We have this one. All right, this is about art. Let's see what we find here. So there you have it. And also in the WhatsApp group. Okay, great. So once again, please enjoy 4 or 5 seconds for reading this passage, starting now. All right. And now it's time for us to go and listen to a lecture on the same topic.
Now listen to part of a lecture in a class focusing on the history of modern art.
Now, scholars sometimes like to say that in the 20th century, art based on Greco-Roman ideals of beauty and physical perfection fell totally out of favor thanks to the work of pioneering critics like Roger Fry. But today, I'm going to argue that this is actually an oversimplification. Now, paintings in the 20th century certainly became more abstract than at any other time in history. But in some ways, this had nothing to do with the work of professional critics, like Roger Fry. I mean, I think it can be convincingly argued that the change in style was simply due to the invention of the camera. See, it was no longer necessary to turn to professional portrait painters to have one's picture taken. And for this reason, there was a gradual decrease in the number of students who went to painting school. It was simply no longer important to spend years mastering technical painting. And instead, it became possible to produce highly abstract works meant to express, well, ideas. However, many of these ideas still had to do with the age-old Greco-Roman ideals. For example, Manet's painting, Luncheon on the Grass, which is sometimes called the first modern painting, it actually used images originally copied from an ancient Roman coffin. Pablo Picasso, a great abstract artist, also created several paintings reacting to Greek mythology. And, to this day, advertisers and filmmakers often turn to Greco-Roman notions of beauty in order to entice audiences. In fact, many modern artists have reacted to too much abstraction in modern art and are returning to classical Greek and Roman themes in their work. So, the Greco-Roman tradition in art is far from dead.
Using the points and examples from the lecture, explain how artistic standards changed in the 20th century.
Great. Well, let us go then to practice this one. And please, you can start preparing your response for this question now. Awesome. Well, now let's go and respond to this one. So please, dear Arlette, you can start responding now.
Okay, to begin with, in the reading passage, we read about the changes in art, European art principle. Critics generally believe that, well, in the 19th century, European critics believed that all the inspiration, all the studies are based in the Greco-Roman art, are influenced in Greco-Roman. But in the 20th century, the things change because the art transformed something more abstract. Well, in the listening part, we heard about this different inspiration. We can see in painters like Monet or Picasso are evoke ideas and different types of art, more abstract, but the inspiration are also of the Roman and Greco art. Okay. That's all.
Great. Thank you very much. Yeah, I think it was a great summary to hear you talked about the two main ideas of this part, the change that existed in the 20th century, varying from these Greco-Roman ideals of beauty and moving into this new abstract notion of art and expressive ideas, right? And then you talked about how contemporarily that notion has been falling out of favor. And once again, people are returning to Greco-Roman ideals of beauty, right? Very good. I think it was great. Let's go with our last practice of tonight's class then. We have a new reading for you. So let us see what this is all about. Okay, this is a natural science topic. So we're going to read about biology. Okay, here you have in the chat box and also in the WhatsApp group. All right, so please, dear let's enjoy this 45 seconds for reading the passage now. All right. Now let us listen to a lecture on the same topic.
Now listen to part of a lecture on the topic you've just read about.
The idea that altruism is a uniquely human characteristic that cannot be found in nature might be popular among certain philosophers, but it really has little basis in fact. Actually, altruism is relatively common in the animal kingdom. Well, for example, in certain families of squirrels, when a predator, say like a fox, comes around, the squirrels are known to shriek out to warn their family members about the danger, even if the noise makes them targets for the predator. Similarly, when a herd of, say, wildebeests is attacked, well, stronger members of the pack will try to trample the threat rather than let the young and weak get picked off, even if this subjects them to danger. So what is the reason for all of this? Evolutionarily speaking, it seems like a puzzle, right? I mean, why would evolution favor the development of altruistic behaviors that might endanger individual life? Well, the answer is it's a bit complicated, but essentially the answer is that by protecting the entire community, including several relatives, the altruistic animal ensures that the community's genes as a whole can still be passed on. Well, in other words, if a single squirrel dies after, say, shrieking at a fox, but the entire community is spared, well, that means that from a collective perspective, the community's fitness is increased by having altruistic behaviors associated with its members.
Using the points and examples given in the lecture, explain how altruism may be a beneficial characteristic for some animals.
There you are. Well, so it's time for us then to go now and respond this one. So please start preparing the response now. Beautiful. So now please start responding to the question now.
Okay, to begin with, in the reading passage, we read about the altruists in the animal kingdom, because altruists are fairly common in humans, but we can also see altruists in the animals. It's not common, but we can see. Generally, expect animals to only act more selfish because it's something about survival. But in the other hand, we can see altruists like a form to survive in community, or preserve the genes for the next generations in some. Sorry, I'm done.
Okay. No, great. It was a very good response. So yeah, I think that you summarized the main ideas once again. Here I have a little commentary on the pronunciation of a word. When you say altruism, right? That word is very interesting one. And it's also very much pleasing to pronounce it as altruism. When I write it here in the chat box for you, it's altruism like this, more or less like this, like altruism. So yeah, like just that word. But apart from that, it was great. Great orthography and pronunciation too. So nothing to deal with. Okay, but just that word. Great. Well, so it was perfect. It was very good. Yeah, and that's we're gonna have to finalize here because I have another group to go and teach now.
Okay.
We'll just stay here, but anyways, I think that thank you very much for having joined. So please, before you go, help me with the poll very quickly as I take your assistance. Okay.
Okay.
Let me look for you in my list. Okay. So here are Arlette Gabriela. Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Arlette, for having shared this last class of the year with me. Thank you very much, as I said, for your company. And well, I'm going to be seeing you next year, next Tuesday, to continue with our classes. Okay, so have a fantastic celebration with your family, and see you very soon.
Okay, Carlos, thank you. Happy New Year to you, and we will see the next year. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. See you later.
See you. Bye.
Bye bye.